good evening, everyone, and welcome to the our first City Menomonie, second, I guess, discussion on housing within the city. Kelly, do you have a roll call?
Luther.
Here.
Traxler. Here. Sutherland. Sweeney. Here. Olick. Here. Schweppes.
Here.
Merrill. Solberg. Here. Schlu.
Here.
Erdman.
Here.
Sommerfeld. Peltier.
Here.
Crop.
Here.
Williams. Cook.
Here.
Martinson.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And then I have some introductions. The panel, the people that are on the panel tonight, if maybe you raise your hand. Jody Carr, Vice President of Dairy State Bank. Dave Nelson, President of Vets Plus Incorporated. Cora Frank, Realtor from RE/MAX. Bruce King, Government Affairs Director at Northwest Wisconsin Realtors Association. Heidi Hooten, Health Done Right, Housing Action Team, Stepping Stones. On the end, okay. And then if we could go around and perhaps we can start on this side and introduce yourself, and whether you're on the Plan Commission or on the City Council. Lee, we'll start with you.
Okay, I'm Lee Swebbs, I'm on both.
There we go, it's popular.
Riley Erdman on the City Council.
Jen Traxler on the City Council.
Dick Martinson, Planning Commission.
Jeff Luther, Planning Commission, City Council.
Chad Schlu, City Council, Ward 9.
Robin Sweeney, City Council.
Faith Bullock, City Council.
Callie.
I'm Callie. I'm the city clerk.
Mary Solberg, City Council.
Brenda Knack, Mayor.
Paul Peltier, Plan Commission.
Dennis Groff, Plan Commission.
Steve Cook, Plan Commission.
Okay, great. And I'll just give you a little bit of overview of the meeting tonight and how we're going to do this. And then we'll take it from there and see how she goes. First of all, I've kind of blocked out an hour's worth of time. If it goes to an hour and a half, I mean, that's okay. But we are sensitive of people's time tonight. And what we thought we would do and how we would handle it is we would go into discussion with the panel and others. And then after that point, if there was some audience that would like to share their thoughts, if we've got time, then we would invite the audience to come up and I'll do that also. So with that, I'll do a little short introduction. The City Council and Plan Commission are holding these workshops to identify housing issues within the city. The city is not planning specific solutions at this time. The city has been hearing from businesses for the past year that there is a lack of housing choice in the community. We also hear that student rentals are decreasing, so there may be an opportunity to reclaim some neighborhoods for single-family housing. This is just a start. Tonight, the city wants to get an input on what is reality in Menomonie. In later meetings, we will talk about solutions. So that being said, we will not be taking motions or action tonight. We are here for input, a discussion, and possible solutions that will result from tonight's meeting for the future. So that, if I could introduce Wendy Sanders, she's the city planner. Wendy, if you could start us out.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. How we're just going to do this tonight, we have the panel here. We're going to start with Jody. We're going to have you just give a little bit about who you are, how you deal with housing, and any thoughts that you may have. And we'll just go down the line. And then we will open it up to the Plan Commission and the Council to ask you various questions. And as you see, we did brainstorm some other questions if Council needs some ideas, or if there's some additional questions that we may want to use. So we'll turn it over to you, Jody. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jody Carr with Dairy State Bank. I'm a vice president and a lender there. I've been lending for about 35 years, and the last 25 of it has been at Dairy State Bank. I am lucky enough to work with both the consumers and the commercial customers, so I see both perspectives in regards to some of the issues with housing as it relates to the consumers with building and purchasing homes, and with the commercial customers as it relates to building, purchasing, and developing. So hopefully there's some background there that can help answer questions for you.
Good evening, I'm Dave Nelson. I'm the president of Vets Plus. I've been a resident of Menomonie now for about 4.5 years. Joined Vets Plus about 4.5 years ago. being relatively new to the community compared to maybe some of the other people in the room. I do bring, I guess, perspective of what I've seen in other parts of the state. I'm born and raised in Wisconsin. I've lived in Wisconsin all my life. Most of the time has been in the Appleton Green Bay area. So now as running Vets Plus, trying to attract and retain employees to the area and help grow the city. So, happy to be here.
Hello, my name is Cora Frank, and I'm with RE/MAX affiliates here in Menomonie. And unlike Dave, I am a lifer of Menomonie. So born and raised, went to Stout, so I haven't really moved too far. It's been great for my career. I raised all of our kids here as well, so we went through the whole school district. So I know Menomonie and know Dunn County very well. Been selling real estate for about 17 years, so I've seen many of the upswings and downswings and been through some of these situations in the past. So hopefully we can answer some questions.
Good evening, I'm Bruce King. I'm Government Affairs Director for the Realtors Association of Northwest Wisconsin. We have 1,000 members over a 15-county area. We extend from Fountain City in far southern Buffalo County to Ashland and Washburn and Bayfield County. So that is a lot of real estate, pun intended, to cover. I'm also contracted Government Affairs Director for the Lake Superior Area Realtors out of Duluth. That covers 5 counties in northeast Minnesota plus Douglas County, northwest Wisconsin. There is a lot of, depending what community you go in, there's a lot of different kinds of housing that is needed. But there's one thing that is true in every community that I work with. There is housing needed in every single community. There have been a number of discussions going in Eau Claire and in Barron County and in Rice Lake, in Spooner, in Hayward, and other communities of the same kind that you're embarking on right now. What kind of housing do you need? What kind of housing do you envision over the next 5, 10, or 20 years? So it's very fortuitous that you are undertaking this right now, and hopefully I can be a resource as you move forward.
Good evening, I'm Heidi Hooten, I'm the shelter coordinator for Stepping Stones. I'm also one of the chairs of the Help Done Right Housing Action Committee. For my job, I work with homeless people in Menomonie, and most of those folks are couch surfing, and so you're not seeing them on the streets. I oversee both our shelters. I work with over 800 people, or that's households, a year around housing issues, whether that's helping them get some rent gathered up, or looking on Craigslist or Zillow or wherever to look for housing. I do some case management with folks who manage to get housed through WestCap, and I also co-teach some housing classes on how to be a good tenant at the county jail. So I work with people who are at or below poverty level. We have a pretty significant number of those in Dunn County, and I can tell you that I got on Craigslist last week looking for somebody who was looking for something around the $500 level, and there was nothing. And there's been nothing for quite some time. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've seen it get increasingly worse. My folks have significant barriers to housing. They have no money. Some of them have criminal history, some of them have evictions or poor landlord history, or they have no landlord history, which can be equally bad, and they have poor credit. And those things will make you not eligible for low-income housing as well as for market rent apartments. So it's been a real struggle to get people housed, and I get calls on the daily for people asking me for help.
Okay, Wendy, I'm going to call you back up to the microphone.
Yep. Bruce, question for you. The Realtors Association for the state did a study. We're wondering if you could just give us some insights from that.
I knew you were going to ask me, that's why I followed it. I'm going to give you the very, very short executive summary. I will tell you this, that you can go to WRA.org and pull this report up. If you don't want to do it and want this version of it, I can provide you with a copy of it. So I do have that. This is in regards to a workforce housing shortage. That's what this entire document covers. The economy is returning to growth, as we all know around here, but the housing stock hasn't. And that's what I said in my opening remarks when I said that every community needs housing of some kind. It's just a matter of what each individual community actually needs. The housing stock's aging, construction prices, and housing costs are rising faster than inflation and incomes. I'll give you an example. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,800 square foot attached garage home, you may be able to build here in Menomonie in the $225,000 to $250,000 range. In Duluth, tack $125,000 onto that for the exact same house. Just because of fees and land and utilities and other things and restrictions on where you can build. You know, Duluth has that interesting, very steep hill that kind of means you're either building down here or up there. But there are, what we look for, and you'll probably hear me say this 6 or 7 times tonight, is impediments to housing. And that can be available land, utilities, water, sewer, location. It could also mean that you may need to rethink how you zone things and what you approve and how you approve it. Yeah, this is a blank slate that you're undertaking. So, you know, there are a lot of opportunities as you move forward. The roadmap that this report lays out is exactly that. How a community can address the needs. And we see a lot of needs in that 30% of your income. Because there are a lot of housing out there, and a lot of rentals out there where people are spending 50 and 60 and 65% of their income. And there are occasions where that housing is really not good at all. I mean, it's tired, it's old. It needs, and it's beyond the point where you can really effectively remodel it and change it. So one of the things that we look at is it better to tear it down and build something different? Do we have to have a duplex there? Can we build a single family home there? Or can we put a fourplex in on that block? You know, the block may not just be a row of houses that are all single family home anymore. There's been zoning changes all over the country that are addressing that issue. Minneapolis is a big one now, that they'll allow duplexes and triplexes in neighborhoods that were strictly single family homes. The amount of zoning changes that I'm seeing and new comprehensive plans that I'm seeing from around the country, and I work with about 600 of my colleagues around the country pretty much every single day that we exchange information. That's what we're seeing in cities big and small, is you gotta rethink some of the things that we do and keep the things that are working the best. But the workforce housing has gotten extremely short. Underproduced units have been over 15,000 in the state of Wisconsin, just in the last couple of years. That's what kind of need there is, and there's need everywhere. So, you know, when I'm out in communities, I'll give you an example. Barron did a housing study last fall. And after we started the study, we asked a couple of questions. Number one, how many homes are for sale in Barron? As of late September, there were none, not a one. How many rentals were there in Barron? None, not a one. How many 5 and 6 bedroom houses are available for rent? None. How many 4-bedroom houses are there for rent? None. There are none for sale either. There are seniors that would like to get into senior housing and get out of their great big old house that they don't need anymore. They have nowhere to go. And now Barron has the happy problem of having 2 or 3 small industries come to town with 20, 30, 40 employees each. They're probably going to be living in Eau Claire or here or Rice Lake or Spooner or wherever they can find some place to live, because there is no housing available. So that is a problem that is going to continue, and is going to continue to get bigger. So jumping on this now is probably the best thing that you can possibly do. But again, there's a lot of stats in here. So I can tell you right now, for example, I'm just trying to find one place that's close to here, and that would be probably St. Croix County. is short by about 400 homes. Eau Claire County is short by about 585 homes. We've been lucky that we've had a couple of developers come in and are doing a couple of pretty good sized projects that over the next 2 years will add over 1,000 units to our housing stock and more hopefully on the way. But we have to take some of the 100-plus-year-old housing that we have and either remodel it or remove it because it's past its prime. It really is.
Oh, that's wonderful, that's good information, thank you, Bruce. Wendy?
Dave, I want to put you on the spot just briefly because you're a larger industry here in the city. Can you just tell us some of the concerns or issues that you may be having with housing related to your employees?
Sure. So I would echo many of the comments from the previous presenter. I can't speak to university housing. I have no interest or no experience or reference to that. But for housing for employees, we had a situation where Vets Plus is the tenant. Actually, it's an apartment that we rent for our employees that are trained, that are coming in and out, and maybe here on an assignment for several months. So there's an apartment in the city of Menomonie under a lease. Vets Plus, signed the lease, paid the rent every month. The landlord knew. And the rent was it was a one-bedroom apartment near the hospital. The landlord knew that the apartment was going to be vacant for about a month, 6 weeks, so he rented it to somebody else. During our lease, while we had paid the rent, and said, "Well, I've got another one coming up that'll be open." This was a second-floor unit. There's a unit coming open on the first floor, and when your next employee comes, we'll just put him in that unit. We literally had no choice because there were no other units available in the city in that price range. So that's the kind of stuff that's going on, that the landlords have so much power that can literally disregard a signed lease that's been paid, which is really pretty crazy. Me personally, I would say, my wife and I are empty nesters. I don't want a big house with a big yard. I don't want to rake leaves, I don't want to cut the grass, I don't want to shovel snow. I think there's a real need for more housing like the cannery. Actually, I think some of the nicer properties that we've got are for people that are a bit older than I am. There's that development that's near the water tower south of the racetrack. There's nothing like that for empty nesters who are still of working age. And I think there's definitely a need for something like that for nicer properties, but I don't need 2,400 square feet. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and some sort of a condo type development where I don't have to take care of the outside work. I don't know of anything like that available in the city. The cannery, every time that those properties, and I think the realtors can probably speak to that, but those things sell in a matter of days. And then Lowell can probably talk because I think it's across the street from Lowell's house. But then they got them and they totally remodeled them. I think that Tom Johnson did that, and there's another one that I think I drive by there on my way to work because it's faster than going down through all the stoplights. So I see the renovation trucks all the time in those places. And so I think there's a real need for that kind of housing as well.
Dave, I wanted to have you add something onto that. I know that we have some South Koreans that you helped facilitate, growth out in our industrial park, and when they came to town and they're looking at 30 employees, give or take, in the future, and more. And I know they struggled a little bit, and maybe you could fill us in on a little bit on what they end up doing in an emergency situation for not only them, but several of their employees.
Yeah, so on the corner of Wilson Street and Cedar Falls Road, the old daycare, which we call the Vets Plus Conference Training Center, there's a 3-bedroom apartment above that. And so we put the South Koreans up in there until they can find housing. So that's another apartment that we use for employees that are in town for projects. So it's not occupied fully on a normal basis. So There had to be probably 8 people, 6 or 8 people that were, and I don't know if I violated any zoning. 6 or 8 people in a 3-bedroom apartment for probably 3 months. And then they did buy a house, I think it's outside of the city limits, it's a Pinewood Golf Course.
Yep, right across the street from Faith.
Yeah, and they're all living there in one big house. I think
Tell them to come visit me.
it's a nice house, but they're all living in one house.
But I know it took them a while to find it, and then they ended up spending more than they wanted to on that house to be able to settle in. And with that, they, you know, they had a couple employees or whatever with them until they can find housing. So I know from the mayor's standpoint and from administration, part of the problem we have is, you know, we're working with developments that's coming like big, I mean, 20, 30, 40 million dollar projects that might need 100 or 150 employees. Right now, we're in negotiations with one of those right now for the industrial park. And do you have housing? Do you have workforce? Do you have, yeah, we got plenty of water and we got plenty of sewer, but we're lacking housing. So I can relate to what you said in regards to that. So, Wendy?
Jody, in the banking industry, what are you seeing for people coming in on the resident side? Are they having a struggle finding homes within the city? Is it easy? You know, what are you seeing from your side?
Absolutely, they're struggling. I mean, our typical procedure, and any bank's typical procedure, is a customer will want to come in and they'll get pre-approved for their home loan because they want to be ready to go when that home becomes on the market. And as Cora can attest to, if there is a home that pops up, there might be 10, 15 people that jump on that house, and the bidding war starts, and the next thing you know, there's anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 or more over the initial asking price, just so that person can be, you know, the homeowner. Well, that leaves the other 9 people, or however many, you know, applied for that home, they have to start over. And so from a banking perspective, it used to be, you know, they could just come in and get a letter and we'd just, you know, send them on their merry way. Yeah, they look good. Well, nowadays, you have to actually make application in order to get that commitment letter. You have to, you know, provide pay stubs, bank statements, you know, tax returns, a credit report, and all that documentation is only good for 120 days. So if they don't find a house in that time period, they have to start all over. And, you know, you're hitting their credit score pretty big if they're very consistently or actively looking for a house and wanting to stay on top of that paperwork. So, and you know, we've talked about construction. Obviously, it's in the reports that the expense of construction is not a viable option for a lot of, you know, new homeowners.
Cora, maybe you can tack on to that and maybe talk about some examples where you're running into people that are looking for homes, those kind of things.
This morning before the meeting, I just ran a few, you know, notes. This is just off of the MLS, so it doesn't include anybody for sale by owners, those types of people. It's just MLS data that I'm dealing with. But right now, in the city limits of Menomonie, we only have 23 homes for sale. Of those 23, 8 of them are the twin homes that are over in the Amber Ridge area. So there's not a lot of homes that are for sale. We had 134 sales, single-family sales last year. So roughly we had about a 2-month, maybe 2.5-month supply if nothing hits the market. I get that right now is a slow time. It tends to be a little bit slower this time of the year. But it is just like Jody had said, when you get a house that's priced right, you have multiple offers on that property, and it's driving those prices again up. So we're kind of defeating the people that can afford it because the prices are just going up faster than most people can even afford. But.
Cora, are you seeing, is there a price range or a price point that you're seeing that's more common? You know, I come in and I'm looking for $150,000 home or whatever, and then what are the homes running at in comparison to that?
Right now, just when I ran the statistics for last year, the average price that sold in Dunn County, not just the city, but Dunn County as a whole, the average price is $176,000, and that's what came off of the MLS. So that's just average. So you've got, you know, all spectrums, and that's including some that are student rentals that have maybe been used as single family, so some of that is also in that statistic. So it's gone up. I was just showing Bruce before the meeting. I said just to compare, in 2009, so it's, 10 years ago, this is 2019, it was 129,000, and now it's 176,000. So it's pretty significant on just the Dunn County stats alone. So that is where our biggest shortage is in that middle range.
And Jody had said, you get somebody in and you get 10 people looking at a house. Is that pretty common? You get a lot of people vying for a home?
If you get a house that's priced right and you're gonna get multiples, I had open houses this last weekend, and it's not uncommon to get half a dozen people just running through in an hour's time to try to get through and find that house, so it's been pretty crazy. So again, yeah, if it's priced correctly. Now, we've got some that are sitting out there stagnant, that's always gonna be the case, but in most cases, if they're priced correctly, they go very, very fast.
Thank you. Heidi, any comments on your end? You talked a little bit about the affordable housing issue. Any comments or what you're seeing out there now?
I've never had anybody be able to afford to buy a house, so that's a little out of my league. My folks don't even have bank accounts usually, so affording a house is the pipe dream, and they're never going to be able to get it. I do some case management for Westcap, so to just give you an idea, for a one-bedroom apartment for a single person or a couple, this is their price range. So they give them a price range when they're on their housing program, and they have to find a landlord that'll work with that program, and the price range for one bedroom they give them is $540. That's rent with utilities rolled into that. And that means you can only find an apartment usually between the $400 and $450 range, and they just don't exist. They just don't exist. The students usually snatch those right up. It's just impossible for my folks to find if they're families. The price range usually goes up, depending on the size of the family, up to $900. There is no way they can afford that when they're off that program. There's just absolutely no way. And most of the people that are on those programs, I'm choosing the hardest people to work with, and so they've got significant barriers. And because the housing market and the rental market is so tight, that the landlords are going to go for those people that don't have those barriers. I mean, it just makes sense, business sense. So, it's gotten harder and harder the longer that I do it.
Question?
Speak loudly.
Yeah. I just wanted to get the floor first.
Yeah.
Okay, my follow-up question is, there are some mobile home parks around town. Are mobile homes rented, or are they pretty much owner-occupied?
They do get rented. Those housing programs don't usually pay for mobile homes because the heating and cooling costs are so high that they exceed the price range. And quite frankly, I've been in some of those mobile homes with folks. I've done walkthroughs with people, and I wouldn't put my cat in them. I've had people fall through floors, and you can walk in and you can see the water stains on the ceiling, and it's just awful.
Wendy, and I know there's a lot of areas. I mean, we talked about at one time tiny home villages. Well, to find a place, but the restrictions on tiny homes, until they can loosen up some of the restrictions at the state level or building codes and so forth, it just doesn't make sense to put that kind of investment into a tiny home when you can't have a slab or a basement or whatever. And then the price that was put at us for a single family home to build one new right now is you can't hardly touch one for under $200,000 building a new home. And then a developer, in order to have a developer come in, you need infrastructure, you need water, your sewer, streets, and all that. And for a developer to pick up the tab for that is big, big money, and then of course to sell the lots and all of this. So, and then to build an apartment complex, again, it's big money, and you have to find the right location. something like an apartment complex, you want it close to, downtown amenities and things of that nature. One of the locations that I was in last week, and I've been in there many times, is the Tanterre Apartments, and I think that's a really fine style of living. There's people, and it's very, very nice. But if we could come up with a solution of where to put what and how much of what we're going to put there, whether it's duplexes, single-family living, tiny homes, or apartment complexes, or developments that are, specific for over 55 or gated communities, of all of that mix. How do we find the right mix and the locations, and how much of a input or how much responsibility will perhaps the city of Menomonie bear on something like this? Do we set up a TID districts, and do we put in infrastructure, and do we put out a high developer, come on in and we want to develop this 40 acres or 20 acres or this plot of land, right? We tear down a block of old houses and recondition an entire block or something like that. And so I guess as the mayor, I get asked these questions and I don't have any of these answers. But I would like to know what these answers are so we have a sense of direction for the future. So I appreciate everybody's comments, and if we could figure out something for the low-income people, something for the people that are looking for a house in that mid-range, something that's affordable to people that can get a loan for loan-to-value type houses, and the Home Sweet Menomonie program, which is outstanding. Dan Osterman headed that program up, and several businesses jumped on it, and to date, 1 year later, 20 individuals took advantage of that. I believe it was 20 so far, and so that's $200,000 was put out there for people to locate themselves within the city of Menomonie, and I think that's outstanding. So that's one successful program. But anyways, I just wanted to put that tidbit in, Wendy, to give you something to work with.
Perfect segue, because my next question to the panel, and I know 3 of you, Jody, Dave, and Laura, are involved with Home Sweet Menomonie. Do you guys have any comments on that program, or how it's working? Is it helping? Those kind of things?
Well, it's a really great program, but there's very few homes that they can take advantage of using that program, so that's the issue with it.
I had somebody who also was looking at purchasing a home, but it's limited. You've got in the city limits, and they wanted to be just on the outskirts, so that disqualified them. And another buyer that I had, their employer wasn't a contributor, so then they were knocked out of the program. So there's, it's a good program, but there's still some loopholes and ways that people, I think, could be tightened up.
I think the limiting factor on Sweet Home Menomonie going forward is the people that own the houses today. So let's say they're owner occupied, where are they going to go? So in order for somebody new to move into that house, the current owner's got to go somewhere. And if there isn't a better option for them, they're going to stay put.
Right.
Okay. I think at this time we'll turn it over to questions from Plan Commission and City Council that you can ask any or all of the panel, and then I'll come back up when you guys are running out of questions.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. I guess I would start with Council and Plan Commission. We're here to talk about this issue and try to come up with some possible solutions for the future. So I'm going to open up the floor to anybody that has questions. Mayor Kraut?
I can't see a microphone without asking something or saying something. I was wondering if there's a reaction. We have a letter in front of us. I don't know if you got that one from Emily Weiss. She, in her letter, she says that with the declining student enrollment over the last couple of years, the rental market has been significantly altered. The rent prices have been coming down, and she thinks there'll be a lot more vacancies with the new development that's going on. It's the slowest rent-up season for student rentals that she's experienced in 30 years. And I know we're maybe talking about different, and she would make reference to, she had listened to the tape, she heard Sandy Waite's comments. Maybe there's a difference between student rental and the ones you're talking about, but is there some crossover? Anybody from the panel have idea, the people that you work with, would they be interested or available for this kind of housing?
Well, I've never gotten anybody into American
And is
Edge.
Emily correct, by the way?
I've never gotten anybody into American Edge. They usually do student rentals. We have a large landlord list. We got it from the city inspector's office, and it didn't come with phone numbers, unfortunately. So we have students try to look up all these people, and it's a lengthy list. We mostly work with the large management companies because they manage the small landlords. So, but I have people going through the entire list. It's probably 6 or 7 pages long. Nothing. Craigslist, nothing. Zillow, nothing. I read this letter and I was actually really surprised. In my opinion, rents are going up and there's nothing out there. So I'm not sure. She may know something that I don't. But you know, I have a student, I have a Stout student right now at shelter, and I have a high school student at shelter right now. And I don't deal with a lot of student rentals, so I'm looking, you know, most of mine are families or older adults that are trying to get housed.
Excuse me, Heidi, how many people do you think that if you had enough houses, how many would you put in a house tomorrow?
Me?
I mean, yeah, if you had the perfect world, what would you say the demand would be for you, for your people?
Oh gosh, Mandy, I have no idea.
I mean,
I would stick everybody in shelter, and I've got right now I've got a waiting list of 20 households for the family shelter.
So you've got 20 plus individuals, so say a total of 20 families and another 25 individuals?
Yeah, but then I've got people filling out housing applications now, trying to get in low-income housing that are couch surfing. 100
100
households, maybe.
And that's just you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm Ward 5, which is kind of known as the Stout Ward, where most of the students are. When my husband bought his house, it was mainly professors in that area, so the price was way up there. Now, when I moved in about 5 or so years ago, it was mainly students around us. We're now seeing a trend, more families are coming in. So right to our right of our house, we share a driveway with them. It used to be 6 hockey students, which they were actually pretty nice. They always cleaned our yard up. But now we have a family there. They've been there for 2 years now, right behind us. I know it used to be a family. I'm not sure if it's still a family anymore, but right across the street from us, now there's a younger couple family. They got a little baby. There's a baby next door to us. We're gonna have a full house soon. And then right across just adjacent, I know that one's been sitting empty for a little bit, I think, but in our area, I've noticed student housing has decreased. It's more families are starting to move into that area, and especially like if you go around the back end of the block that starts going into that next ward over, it's starting to be more families than Stout rentals over there.
Would you consider these people family owned or family rented?
All rented, family rented. Very few owned homes around that area, very few.
The one thing that I'd like to see, and renting is good in some areas, I would really like to see ownership. Because if a family comes to Menomonie, they have ownership, they have pride, and they stay here and they become a part of the community. So at any point, if we could encourage ownership, that would be ideal. That's right.
I guess along the lines of Faith's comment, question for the realtor and the banker, with houses that were student rentals or are in those neighborhoods that are labeled as student rental neighborhoods, how difficult is it to sell those houses to families?
If a family is coming into town, the first thing a lot of them will say is, I don't want to be in the student rental area. They want to be outside if they've got a young family. But with the lack of inventory, exactly what's happening is there's nothing for them in their market, so they're buying the rentals, which is then pushing, you know, just like Heidi said, that the landlords would rather rent to them and have less issues in some cases, and then that pushes even Heidi's people further down the pipe.
And what's actually worse is when there isn't anything available, most people, if they're married, got a couple of kids, you know, and young family, they kind of have a vision of, you know, what age of a house that they're looking for, or even an apartment of what they're looking for. And if they can't find it, they're going to Eau Claire. I mean, they're just totally leaving the area, and they might work in Menomonie, but they're driving back and forth because of the lack of the housing.
And some of the rentals, I wouldn't move into myself. Some of the students do a really good job keeping the yards clean and keeping it up. But then there's also a few houses, when I go and get my signatures, the wallpaper is beer cases. So, I mean, when a family comes in and they're looking, they don't want the rundown house that hasn't been kept up, because why would a landlord keep it up and keep it super nice if you're just gonna have students come in there and just abuse it and abuse it and abuse it, because they're not staying here, so students don't have the pride in housing like a young family would. Like, we gotta keep it nice, keep it clean. Students just use and abuse most of the time. That's not all of them, but a lot of the times when I go and get my signatures and some of them invite you in and everything. I mean, if I was looking for a home, I wouldn't look in my area that I'm in anymore. I would not. It's not attractive. Needless to say, the houses are old, they're run down, they kind of need to be torn down and rebuilt or completely remodeled.
Question again about these old houses in the neighborhoods that are on the verge, going back and forth, mainly for Jody. When people go to get a loan on them, typically will the bank make a loan of the usual down payment, or are they going to have an exceptionally large down payment because of the condition?
Well, it depends on how it's zoned. So if it's, not zoned as residential, or multifamily, or the appraiser makes comment that, it's in the heart of student rental, it makes it really difficult for that person to get standard financing. So a standard financing, a 30-year fixed rate mortgage you can buy is, buy something with as little as 0 to 5% down. That doesn't work for those programs, or for those houses.
Yeah, so you've got a less expensive house, but you need more down payment to get into it.
Yes, or you have a program that's not ideal. You might have an in-house program, you might have a balloon, you might have something that, is not a permanently fixed interest rate for the term of the loan. And that's pretty much what everybody wants when they're, looking to buy a home. We have no problem financing. Banks are fighting over deals. That's not an issue. It's, what's the best program that we can get somebody. We're able to obviously finance the people that want to purchase them as student rentals. That's not an issue, but yeah, if somebody wants it as a single-family home, it poses some problems.
And when it comes to construction loans and things like that, if you buy a house that needs a lot of repair, you get it for, average okay price. How does it fall into perspective if you need a $25,000 construction loan right off the bat to do a remodel on an older house?
Well, we can do it one of two ways. We can either do it as a construction loan, to get it to the point of where it's completed, and then we turn around and refinance it and put it into a permanent, type of product. If it's not, excessive repairs, if it's less than, let's say, 10% of the purchase price, we can just kind of take this perfect world where we take the cost of the repairs and the cost of the home, add it together, figure out, from the appraiser what the value is, and then lend from that, and then set up a repair escrow. That's nice when we can do that, but it depends on, the extent of repairs that need to be done.
I didn't know that existed actually, so that's good information. Council? Yes, Lee.
Last week, we were given information on the vacant land in the city. And single family, it shows that there's 161 vacant plotted lots. And it's estimated that there's 1,338 that are unplatted. And the total for all types, including limited mobile, and twin homes, platted vacant right now is 224, and the vacant unplatted estimated is 2,434. So that's about 2,500 lots that are available. And I think this kind of, to me, shows a problem we have here, and that it could be our zoning. That's the problem. And granted, not everything's platted that's going to be for sale. I own the lot across the street from our house on the river, and it's not for sale as long as we're living there, but that's my cabin. But I remember some examples sitting here in the council. They wanted to put in some the age that Mr. Nelson was talking about, type housing up on Dairyland Road, up on that 12 acres there once you get from the top. And the council at that time wouldn't even let it go to the plan commission. It was voted down. I supported it. I thought it was a real mistake, but it didn't even take it to the plan commission, which is normally what's done. This past year, there was a development on 21st across from the middle school. Developer came in, I believe, he started with 148 units, if I remember correctly, and he reduced it down to 96. It didn't pass. There's, you know, why we got 11 of us sitting on the council. There was 10 that night. It was a tied vote, and the mayor voted against it. Although the administration had been working with the developer trying to get it to go through. But I think something like that might be the type of what Bet Plus might have been looking for. And I think we got to start looking all the mentality that everything's got to be single family. I have a son that lives up in Vancouver, British Columbia. You don't see any single family housing up there. You know, it's even condos you can't hardly afford up in that country. But I really think, to me, the mission of this group is to, we got to look at this zoning. We got to get more open-minded as far as the council goes, the planning commission. When a developer comes in and realize we got to do something, or we're just, you know, we're not going to have the development. There's no need to talk to somebody about bringing 150 employees in here. They're all going to live in Eau Claire or Knudsen. And
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the single-family homes and the consumers and the lack of housing. We also work a lot with the developers at Dairy State Bank. And, you know, quite frankly, they probably got to the point where they're kind of done banging their head against the wall trying to get those projects approved. And there's two really, really huge issues that kind of haven't even been addressed. Maybe property taxes is one thing, but with city council, I understand, you know, it's very important to represent the people that, you know, have elected you. But there's kind of that not in my backyard attitude that people don't want change. You know, they want to be able to look across this nice open field and it's like, okay, if you've moved into the city, you know, you've kind of eliminated that ability of being able to have that nice open space. I mean, if they wanted to live in the country, they should have lived in the country. So I think it's important for the city council members to understand that it's kind of like a business. We need to make the city successful and how to make money and how to bring employers in and how to bring employees in to, you know, cure the labor shortage and to, you know, we need to obviously cure the housing shortage. The other big issue that we see with the developers is there's a state statute that allows a buffer around every city. And within the city of Menomonie, based on population, it's about 1.5 miles. So what ends up happening is these developers or whoever will make these developments outside of the city limits. So now you have people who have the option of having maybe a slightly bigger lot and way less property taxes, and they're living right across the road from the city limits. Those buffers aren't being enforced, and so eventually you're going to get to the point where there's all these developments surrounding the city and there's not going to be room for growth. So, I mean, it's something that we need to enforce because, you know, the people are basically getting their cake and eating it too. So they're getting their new home, they're getting less property taxes. There's a lot of building. I happened to pull the report from Dunn County, and there was 48 new housing starts. And just looking through your information for the city of Menomonie, it was 5. So there's a lot of activity to be had. Now we need to bring the demand back to the city of Menomonie.
Okay, thank you.
I want us to ask about what we quite often call government housing, or we did in the old days, Hotspur Ridge, and there's a housing authority that owns different properties around town, I think duplexes, fourplexes. Is the government still involved in any of that? Or is maybe Heidi knows about this, or is this very restricted by age and income and?
Actually, for a small town, we have quite a bit of that. So Menomonie Housing Authority does family housing, and then they have 2 of the high rises for elderly and disabled folks. Let's see, Impact 7 has 2 units for people who have physical disabilities. There are some family units in those, and then 1-bedroom units. Cardinal Capital has a family unit across the street from the high school, which is 2 and 3 bedrooms. Landmark Company has a unit which is 1 and 2 bedrooms over on South 20th Street, over by SA over there. And then there's Elmwood Senior Housing, which is not in Elmwood, it's here in Menomonie, and those are fourplexes for they're single bedrooms and for elderly and disabled. So we, for a town the size of Menomonie, that's kind of amazing, in my opinion. There's a lot of places that don't have that. But again, they're restricted, just like market rent. All those are, the rent is based on 30% of gross income. Family units, they do pay electric, but disabled and elderly, the utilities are covered for them, which is nice. But they do restrict people, most of them based on credit, landlord history, and again, criminal history. So it is difficult to get them into those units too.
Is there any new government money coming down the pipeline to expand on those, to add more that you know of?
Not that I know of, Dennis.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
There's a lot of criteria that the developers and the bankers have to meet for that government type of financing. It's very difficult.
Dave?
Is there any state money available, like TIF money or community development block grant money that could be available to the state to help offset some of the infrastructure costs?
Wendy?
Yeah, in one of our sessions coming up, hopefully we want to get into a little more conversation on that. Block grant, probably not, though there is funds, and the city does have a housing rehabilitation program right now, so those are for either rental units or for single family, so those are available. But that is income restricted. TIF districts, possibility. There may be some kind of incentives that could be offered for development. I don't know if we've got other things. We want to hear some ideas. And I think maybe that's a question. Bruce sees some other communities, maybe more so than some of us. Have you seen any assistance that other communities have been offering, either for rental or for single family or building?
Yeah, what's holding them back is money. There's a number that would like to do that. There are communities that are looking at putting some kind of a program together. I've worked with a few folks on employer-assisted housing, whereas, for example, if a medical facility is trying to attract residents to stay, that they would either provide $5,000 or $10,000 down for a down payment on a house, or they'd pay a percentage of their rent with the caveat that they stay for 5 years. That has been discussed with a couple of different medical facilities here in northwestern Wisconsin. I know Governor Walz a few days ago wants the legislature to bond $278 million in Minnesota for affordable housing projects from across the state. That might be something. And the Wisconsin legislature does have a few bills with regards to workforce housing that are working their way through committee. Whether we're going to be able to get them on the floor and get them voted on before the session ends in late February, March is still questionable.
And I'm just being mindful of time.
Well, and I mean.
I know we're not.
We're not pressing the
locked
issue
into
at time so much, but I just want to make sure everybody is on the time frame that we want a big bang for the buck, whatever we spend.
I think we had some questions that we had given before, and I think we've answered a number of those, but I think one question for each of the panelists would be, if you could change one thing about housing in Menomonie, what would that be? Feel free to jump in all at once.
I think one of the hurdles I see a lot is the cost of construction, and if somehow that could get, I don't even know what the answer is there, but then people who want to build out or build down would be able to afford, just like Dave said, if I have a big house, I'm almost stuck because to even downsize, it's going to cost me more money than just staying in my big house. And so I think we need to see that before we can see movement. So once we get that, people are going to move either up or down and then filter those other people in. But that would be one thing I'd like to see, but don't know what the answer is.
For me, so if it's one thing, I'm thinking of my employees and helping to grow our manufacturing workforce. In the packet, I think it said the average rent in Menomonie is like $1,200, which is way too high. We got to bring that down. And my perception is it's higher, the rents are higher here than they are in Eau Claire. I don't know if anybody else has any actual data, but if I go on Zillow or Craigslist and compare like the stuff on Whisper Court, you'll see the exact same buildings in the Eau Claire area that are $100, $150 a month cheaper. So if there's a way to bring those rents down, that would help us and help our hourly workers in the production facility find affordable housing.
I think that, it's kind of a supply and demand deal too, when the supply is low, the demand is high, the prices go up.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking in regard to rents, we have a builder developer that we've worked with for many years, and they will often do the same footprint, whether it's in the city of Menomonie or city of Chippewa. And I had the opportunity to look at one of their property tax bills, and they had an identical property, and in Menomonie it was $7,400 more per year for the property taxes versus city of Chippewa. So the developer can't absorb that cost, so they obviously have to add it to the rents. So in that 8-unit apartment, 8 people were paying an extra $920 a year just to live there versus, outside of the city.
If I could just speak a little bit in defense of the city of Menomonie. I've had lots of experience with budgets and things, and every year Cedar Park, as a matter of fact, puts out a comparison of tax rates. I think there are about 50 area communities. The city of Menomonie itself is in the median. It's the county. Dunn County is one of the highest in the state of Wisconsin, and no one has ever been able to give me a good reason why that is. And the other, our tax rate compared to Chippewa Falls for the city is actually less than Chippewa Falls. I had a bet with a guy and I won a steak dinner because of that.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So our county is much higher, and that's what affects it.
The county is about $3 per thousand higher Dunn counties than Chippewa County, the county tax.
Yeah, and they all get a portion. I mean, the school tax, the tech college, the county, and the city are all taxing identities today.
Yeah, can I ask a question about that? Yeah. So in business, we would lower the cost per unit by increasing volume. And I don't know if there's any applicability in the mill rate, but so the question would be, if you have more houses and a higher tax base, does that lower the mill rate?
Yes.
It takes a lot. But the other thing is that makes a difference that the administration has been really pushing on is additional businesses. A $20, $30, $40 million business, that revenue really helps offset, and it really helps the budgets. The city has been pretty, we've been staying under the expenditures restraint program for a number of years, And what that allows is $120, somewhere $130,000 extra coming to the city of Menomonie from the state of Wisconsin. So we're trying to stay within that 1.5 of increase every year. And some of the things that we've done to offset some of those things was, for instance, our paramedics, the fire department, when they become paramedics, that brought in an extra $1 million a year. That helps offset those taxes. When we don't work overtime amounts for the city employees, that helps offset the taxes. Just to have less snow, less salt, that helps. Our police now being community-based police officers and doing everything in that nature, that's helped. The overtimes, the wages that we pay, the work that goes into for the union wages and so forth and so on for the police and fire, they've been coming to the table, and it's been real good dialogue between the city and the workers, and that's really helped bring it down. So there's a lot of, it's just not just like boom, we can fix this with a wave of a hand, but all these little things play into this, and I think it's important that we keep that on a steady movement. The other thing is too, I think we should probably get one last go around here, and then maybe we should hear from the audience and to see if there's some participation or some great ideas now that if you've heard the feedback. And this is an idea searching session. So again, I would go around the table. Paul?
Oh, okay, if you're gonna go around, I'll just get in line, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, Ryan.
I guess I had one other question for the panel. Just as elected officials, what decisions or mistakes do you keep your fingers crossed that we're not going to make, that are going to make things worse?
Are we free to speak?
Yes.
I guess it's, it's important to listen to the people, I understand that. But I have to go back to, it's a growing community, and, that not in my backyard is a big factor, I think. And I'm sure you all get phone calls and complaints, and, and people are really unrealistic and probably naive if they think there's not going to be some development next to them. I think that really needs to change.
The floor is open, basically. Let's just, Jan?
If we would have more 55-plus housing, that would free up some of the larger homes, because we have friends that would like to sell their places, their real houses, and move into something that's for 55-plus. And it's not around. We live at Tantera, and they're full.
Can I ask a question regarding Tantera? What is an average rent price range in Tantera?
I think it's somewhere between $800 and $900 for a 2-bedroom, and I believe that's 950 square feet.
And that's everything included?
Well, we only pay our electricity. The water and the sewer is included, heating the hot water is included, the heat is included. If you want space inside for the garage, that's $40 a month extra. If you're going to have a cat, that's $25 a month extra. If you have a second cat, that's grandfathered in, that's okay. But it seems like it's somewhere between $800 and $900, and then I believe the 1-bedroom apartments are $100 a month less. So our electricity runs us about $50 a month.
Wow.
If you want cable, of course, then you pay that.
See, I would consider that affordable housing. I mean, in that price range zone, that when you start getting the amenities put in included in the rent, now it's an easy amount to figure. I'm going to pay this much. But if you're paying $1,000 a month, and then you pay your heat bill and your electric bill and your Wi-Fi bill and your electric bill and your garbage and your water and your sewer, well, that raises that a lot, and that's not affordable anymore in my assessment. Yeah, Charlie.
I just asked Jen, for Tantera, there's 82 apartments, which density helps the cost, the affordability of those apartments.
Okay. What's the average age at the tent here? Is it 55?
Well, the first time we lived there was about 25 years ago. And we were about average age. Well, now we're still about average age.
Thank you. I think one of the most telling statements was by Jody, is that the developers are tired of beating their heads against the wall. And it appears to me, and maybe Cedar Court would or could add something to it, but I think Menomonie may have developed a reputation as not being developer friendly. And that is our elected officials, the Plan Commission, and other folks that are making these kinds of decisions. And I know, certainly on the Plan Commission, occasionally, I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall because these developments, which are being projected or presented, are meeting with not approval. And again, as has been stated, is that it's the NAMBY, not in my backyard, theory is that I want all this space around me, no developments, ever. And when the citizens present that case, obviously, they should be listened to. We all listen to our constituents. But we have to make the decision based on what's good for the city of Menomonie. And when we're sitting here saying we've got this shortage of housing, and yet we're not approving any new housing developments, folks, where do you think the new housing is going to come from? And that's my question. If we're not approving it, if we're voting all this stuff down, even when the Planning Commission has presented it to the council and it gets turned down, where do you think we're going to make up this housing without new construction?
Okay, thank you. Jeff, do you have anything? No, that's you. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Chad, anything to add to that?
I don't know, people kind of, so my dad always made, when I was looking for a home, I tried to get some money from my dad, and he said, if you don't have 20% down for a home, you got no business buying a home. So I don't know if things have changed, or, I mean, if you don't make enough money, maybe you should be renting until you do save enough money to get a home. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Can I speak to that? So if you start renting and you're in that $1,200 a month range of rents, theoretically, you could really be putting a pretty good dent on a home loan in lieu of paying that out for rent. So gone are the days where, you used to have 20% down. That's just not the way it is anymore. Pretty much the standard, buyers right now are buying a home with about 5% down. If they've sold a home, they obviously have a lot more to put down, which is great, but the bottom line is the rent is so high that they could be using that money better as a home payment.
Okay. Good question, good answer, Jeff.
But with your home payment, you have your property taxes on the side. You also have your hot water heater going to hell, your furnace. You have upkeep, you got a lawn to take care of. So more people are, I have an older brother who's rented all his life. And, he's got nothing to show for it when he retires and stuff, but he's got everything he ever wanted because he never had to buy this, buy that, fix that, put new siding on, put a new roof on. And that's why a lot of people, I think, are looking at rent. The development down the road from my place in Cedar Falls, they were filling those 8-plexes up as fast as he could finish them. Brian Shepchuk up there on Wilson Street, his 18-plex or whatever, he had people moving in to apartments on the one side while he was still on the other side sheetrocking and painting and trying to get them ready. And I believe he told me by the end of the year, he was gonna have all 18 of them units filled. And they are 1 bedroom, 1 car garage, water and sewer included. And I guess they are about $1,000 a month rent. But you have no lawn, no snow plowing to take care of. I think we need to have more developers come in and be willing to build units like that, rather than, you know, the big apartment building units and stuff. I mean, they're nice looking too, and I don't know if anybody's come by there and seen them. He did a really nice job, and that's the type of housing we need, is, you know, to bring people in. And, you know, maybe bump them up to a 2-bedroom, you know, but like I said, he was filling them up as fast as he could finish them.
Good points, good points. Any comments? Can we just go ahead, Robin?
I'm lucky enough to rent with the students and I love them. But what has been asked of me is what can we do to help the landlord so that they can buy these houses affordably and fix them up so they're nice and still be able to make some money, but make it affordable for people to rent. Because if you buy these homes and refurnish them or refurbish them, you have to get so much rent in order to make any money, and they can't, you know, we have a lot of people who want to do that, but in order to make it affordable, which is like the 500, you know, 700, 800 is high here. So that's what they're asking me.
Okay, good point.
I think I'm good. I'll talk, I'll speak if I hear something.
Callie, do you want to say anything?
Yes.
You bought a home in Menomonie, and you love Menomonie. And did you have any problem finding your house when you bought it? 2 years, or how many years you been here? Oh, there we go. See, I knew she was
Bought my house in November of 2015, and it was actually the first house I looked at, and I think I had the only offer and I got it. But I bought a house because I couldn't afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. My house payment, I'll tell you, with my taxes escrowed, is $566 a month.
That's the type of housing.
I couldn't rent here.
And that's the type of, my feeling is if we can have that style of purchasing and housing program in Menomonie, it's a win-win for not only the homeowner and the employer, but it's also a community person that's going to play a part of our community. And that's the style of house that I think if we could move it towards, that's what I think we should do momentum on. Mary?
A few things. When Jan said that, you know, and I know there are a lot of seniors, people my age too and younger, that want to sell their homes and move into something that they have less care of. And they don't have to shovel snow or do all the outside work. They're leaving homes that are, for the most part, well kept, you know, and these are decent homes that you don't have to bulldoze down or do a lot of renovation unless you want to make changes just because you like what the changes are going to be. So that's a plus on that. And then with Jeff, I think Chef's Checks was pitched to us as a senior apartment because there was no steps, walk-in showers. There's younger people living there.
But a senior could live comfortably.
But there was no steps, and there were going to be walk-in showers and what senior amenities would look like. And then a question for Heidi, talking about the people that are trying to find homes or apartments but have less than the good resume. What would it take for them to find, to be able to live in a decent complex, apartment building, whatever? As far as price, as far as if they have a bad, you know, if they have a criminal record. I'm asking for your perspective, but I'm also thinking, okay, would somebody want to rent to someone with a bad history?
So when we've asked landlords, what would it take for you to accept these folks? They want them to come with people. So if they're involved with drug court or family court, that should be a plus because they've got, they're dropping UAs and they're actively involved in recovery and doing all these good things. They come with a social worker, a CSS or a CCS worker. I've offered to come with people, and I've got a lot of people, and I'm just one person, so I don't offer that very often. I offer it for super, super difficult people, and sometimes landlords will take me up on that, and that means that they will call me if I need to come in and mediate anything. So they want them to come with people. And we've got people at the jail taking our good tenant class, and they've told some landlords, I took this class on how to be a good tenant, and that has some sway, but it's really if they come with people that can go in and negotiate or mediate something if something goes awry. And there just isn't enough folks that do that. So I don't know if that looks like a mentoring program where you come with a mentor from the community that will help you out. I've got people, we had a young kid that came and was doing some work in the pantry. He didn't even know how to use a broom. Sometimes people don't know how to clean. They don't know how to talk to a landlord. They don't know how to pay their rent. They do money orders or whatever. And so sometimes people just don't understand this stuff because that's not how they grew up. So if they come with someone, though, you have somebody who can help you do that stuff. So that's one thing. The other thing we've talked about in the housing committee is doing how to be a good landlord class, how to be a good tenant class, and eviction prevention classes. So maybe through the court system we could figure out a way to expunge some of those evictions so that they're not hanging around, because at some point, I believe in redemption, and I think at some point when people are working really hard to turn their lives around, and they've got this stuff lingering out there on the internet forever, at what point do you give somebody a shot, So those kinds of things. Does that answer that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
Yep. Paul?
This is kind of a jump ball question, but in Menomonie, we have an image problem when you say renter, because we have so many students in town, and students have a set of behaviors. And so I guess when we're talking to the neighbors and things and talking about adult renters, workforce renters, what's the story arc nowadays? It used to be that you would rent for a few years and then you would settle. You'd rent for 3 years out of college and then you buy a house. And kind of, what's the modern story arc for people in the workforce at anywhere from the $15 an hour machine operator up to a technician or a supervisor? What kind of term of rental are people looking for these days?
I'll jump in. My experience, so Vets Plus is a member of Home Sweet Menomonie. I know we've got 3 or 4 young professionals, married, babies, now they want to buy a house. And so, at least in my experience, is when the baby comes around is when they want to have a yard and have a swing set and those kinds of things. And but I don't think any of the Vets Plus employees have participated in Home Sweet Menomonie yet because they haven't been able to find the house in Menomonie. So one of those houses that's been well maintained that somebody wants to move out of, I think would sell very quickly because of Home Sweet Menomonie.
Yeah, because I know at one of the Plan Commission meetings, there were some people who were trying to disparage renters as a class, and I I considered doing it. I don't think I actually did it because I don't like audience participation in meetings, but I really wanted to say to that group, okay, which ones of you have never rented an apartment? Because all of us had to start out somewhere. All of us started somewhere. And if you were fortunate enough to come out of college and immediately buy a house, well, you're very lucky.
Dennis?
I wasn't one of those, and I have nothing more to say.
No, I would just be repetitive at this point. So.
Anything else from the panel or council or planning commission? We've got some time. You know, I just wanted to make sure that we keep things moving, but I would invite, I guess, at this time to have the public comment. If the public would like to come up and give us your name and your address and keep it within a short, maybe a 3-minute time frame or something along those lines. Step up to the podium, they think the microphone is on, we would welcome you at this time. So public comment is now open. You're welcome to go. Come on up, Sandy. And
well, first of all, I am one of those homeowners that is looking. Oh, what?
First of all, who are you?
Oh, Sandy White, 608 Elm Avenue West. I am a homeowner with a single-family home, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2 fireplaces, and I live in it by myself. And I just paid like $4,500 taxes. Taxes is a concern for me, especially as I'm trying to transition eventually in a couple of years into a retirement phase. I would be happy to sell my home at some point, but I would like to know, you're right, where am I going to? And I don't want to go to an apartment. I've never lived in an apartment. I've always had some woods around me. You have to understand, I lived 10 years in Alaska, 13 years in the state of Maryland in the country, and now I live on Elm Avenue West, and I have 7 acres of woods around me. That's a secondary part of my house. So where can I go to? I would love to have a condo type of thing. I don't want to pay for all the house services and stuff. I want it all done for me eventually. And but you're right. So I'm looking for some developer to come up with some ideas on where those of us who are in our 60s now can go to. And then I'd be happy to talk to some of the realtors about selling that house. Okay. The other concern I have is I know recently in this last year, you made a decision about creating a TID for housing development, which we've never done in the history of Menomonie before. And that went to I call it glorified apartments for students on 17th Avenue. That was done where we had an external developer or contractor, not native to Menomonie, not part of the Menomonie community, and yet then the city even gave land to put it in a planned unit development. That concerns me. And yet it was targeted for college students with, I understand, 4 bedrooms in a unit, $500 per person. And the city's subsidizing that. So I'm asking the council and the plan commission, when you make future decisions and coming up with challenges or solutions to the challenges that you face in the housing area, is make decisions. Please be careful on what kind of decisions you're making and what are you opening the door up to. It's a concern of mine, it's a concern of a lot of residents of mine and people I know, and we don't always, I happen to follow some of the city council agendas because I served 12 years on this city council. So I still get the agendas, I still follow them. But lots of times things are placed on the agenda and the general public doesn't know about it. There's lack of communication on when hot topic issues are coming up. And how do we communicate that with the appropriate communication tools to the general public and the residents of this community so they have input as stakeholders in the future of what's happening to Menomonie. And I heard from TK last week, I think she's the director of the health department, about communication. Here she is involved in Done Health Right. We've got 5 action teams. I'm serving right now in the environmental health action team. We've got, I think Heidi was sitting over here in the housing one, but there was 5 issues that were raised after that survey was done. And we've got 5 action teams going on right now. We need to involve all the stakeholders. We need to have appropriate communication and get it out in other ways than just putting it on an agenda that very few people, I think, see, other than the Plan Commission or City Council, and the few of us who continue to get those City Council agendas. So that is a concern of mine. How can we improve what we're doing in the city to communicate to residents when there's hot topic issues for them and things where we should be getting more of their input and involvement, because we are all part of this community and they should all have a part of a say if they so choose. But so many times it's on an agenda and a decision is made that particular night and there's not a lot of input for them. So that is a concern. And believe me, as I go into my retirement phase, I'm going to continue to get the City Council agendas, but I'm going to continue to work on issues that impact this community and work on how can we improve so that everybody has input and is equally engaged in the topics and has equal input to those issues and challenges that we face. Let's see, you've talked about
We are on kind of a time.
oh, so now you're gonna give me are you giving me a 3-minute limit again? You're not. You've done that to me before.
No, I'm being very copacetic. I want to hear what you have to say. I just want you to, that if it's a duplicate of
So
something else.
all I'm saying is, as we move forward, I hope we do it in a very mindful way. I hope we do it in a very involved way and in a very engaged way. And I hope that we have the opportunity out there so a lot of our residents can have input. And I know I heard someone over, I know your tag is on the floor, so. Jody, okay.
Sorry.
I know you said not in my backyard. There's other concerns in not in my backyard. To me, I sat on the Urban Forestry Board for 15 years and was part of that before it ever became an ordinance. And so the environment is a concern of mine. And you're right about those external developments going on. I'm concerned about the ones surrounding Menomonie where they have septic systems and they don't have, there's no water and sewer. So from an environmental perspective, all of those individual septic systems being placed out there past Dairyland Road, where we've got a couple now, is it Timber Ridge, Timber Canyon? There's a bunch of them going on right now. That concerns me because I sit on the environmental health team right now. What's going to happen to our water supply out there? I've got a father and a sister and sister-in-law and stuff living out in that area, not in one of those developments, but in land that they developed maybe 20, 30 years ago. And it concerns me about what futures they're going to face with having water that is okay to drink in their systems out there, because they have wells. And so I don't know what's eventually going to be sinking in and going through the filtration system to those areas. But anyway, it's a concern of mine, the environmental end of it. So I think I'll just pass for right now. But I'm going to continue coming to the meetings, I'm going to continue listening, and I'm going to continue to have hope, and hope that we are motivated to involve all of our residents in these decisions.
Thank you, Sandy. I know communication, I'm just going to address a couple of topics real quick. Communications is important. I know we post them. We can do more. We can do a better job with the communicating. It's constant. It's a struggle. But you're right. Communication is important. Being here, you have 7 acres of extra land. It sounds like a good development area.
You can't build on it.
Not
It's
my
down by the
backyard. Okay. Anybody else in the other audience participation? Public comments? Come on up. Give us your name and address. And
my name is Lita Forcine. I own a house with another woman at 1315 7th Street East. We're putting the house up for sale probably in May. I have a tiny house all picked out, and I want to live in Menomonie because it's my home. And I want you to tell me where I can park it.
that's a problem. That's what we're faced with. And I agree. And I'd like to put a tiny home village together with even a gated tiny home village. but I'd like to park them on a slab. I'd like to have a lot of amenities that the building codes won't let us allow us to do. And I went to Madison to talk to the powers that be, the governor and so forth and so on, and it's a struggle to get laws changed and the dynamics that we need. Right now, they have to be on axles, they have to be 400 square feet or less to be considered a tiny home. It's a problem. But I agree, I think that is, I mean, there's tiny homes in Rice Lake now, there's tiny homes in Minneapolis, there's, in Florida, I was just past a tiny home village down there. I think could be a good way for the future, for those that are transitioning, maybe from 6-month employment to lifetime employment in Menomonie or whatever, so I appreciate that you bring that up.
Yeah, and also it could help with people that are in transition, that can't afford high-priced rental. So anyway, I want you to keep me in mind, and I'm just holding out that there'll be a place for me to park it.
Okay.
May or June.
Lita, what was your last name?
Forseen.
Forseen?
F-O-R-S-E-E-N.
Okay. Thank you.
Walmart parking lot.
Public comment is still open, and the other thing that I want to add to this dynamics, and it made great points. I mean, there was a lot of good topics here tonight, and there's a lot of elements to this, okay? And some of the things that we may have missed, or maybe we want to elaborate on, I would like for you to take a few minutes, jot down some things, send it up to the mayor's office up here, 800 Wilson Avenue. By the way, this building is now property of the city. The city has bought it from the county, and we are looking for other entities to renters to fill the rest of the space. So it's pretty exciting that the city of Menomonie is going to stay here. Well, and actually, housing here. We have actually got a lot of tenants already lined up for this building, and a lot of those tenants are community service style tenants, so nonprofits and the like. So we're pretty excited about that, but I want more input. So if you take 5 minutes and you're thinking about this tonight or tomorrow, jot down some things, throw it on a piece of paper, either bring it up or send it to us here at the mayor's office. We want to keep this thing going, okay? And I listen to the people, I listen to groups, organizations, and all of this is important. I get stuck in the middle. Sometimes it's a tug rope because, oh my gosh, not in my backyard, or we need this, or we need that, or this is a great development, that's a better development, and so forth and so on. But I'll tell you what, if you can just give us your feedback. We're going to be scheduling another meeting, a little bit similar. I think on the next meeting, we pretty much, we talked about defining the issue at the last meeting, validating the need. There is a need. We have just validated that tonight, so that's good. We're looking at the Menomonie concept, maps and layouts. The next meeting will be probably maps and layouts. We are looking at tentatively January 27th at 7 p.m., but that has not been set in stone yet. So we're looking for ideas there. And then we're going to be coming back in February for city programs, resources, and regulations. Because regulations, like the tiny home village, regulations just shut us right down on that. But resources, and if a TID district comes into play, maybe there's some block grants where we can knock down a whole block of old houses and do a block grant scenario where we build a whole new block of houses. There's a lot here that we can grab a hold of. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. Please stay involved. If you didn't get a lot out of tonight, maybe you can give us more input for next time. I gained a lot. I think Paul and all of you, I think we all grabbed a hold of something, and that's where we start. So I appreciate all your time, and we finished in good time tonight. There's a basketball game on, I think, if I remember right. Oh, is it football this time? Oh, I guess I'll tie it up with the passion. Anyways, do we need is there anybody that wants to speak before we leave? I would then call this meeting adjourned, and thank you everybody for participation, and to stay in touch. Jeff?
I'd like to say congratulations to Ted Pizza.
Oh, yeah.